water is so vital to us, right? Like, we need water. I mean, sometimes, like right now, I just need a little drink to wet my throat and my mouth so that I can speak a little bit more clearly. But we need water, right? It's refreshing, right? Kind of like taking a break in the middle of the week and reflecting on God's Word. Stick around. This is Midweek Refresh. So I showed you, water at the beginning of this, and we're going to get into John chapter 4 today, where Jesus talks about water. But before we do that, before we jump into my thoughts on John chapter 4 today, we're going to take a pause and do something a little bit different. From the beginning of this, I've wanted to include some different things for you. One of those that I really want to include for you is pausing and getting into a little bit of music. So if you would, for the next few moments, just pause with me. We're going to join with a friend of mine, Isaac Schade. He's coming to us from Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri, and he's just going to take us into the throne of God for a few minutes with just a little bit of worship.
In this life we will find that we will be earning. In this life we will find the world won't satisfy. In this life we will find that we will be empty without you. Jesus, you're the well that won't run dry. Jesus, you're the drink that satisfies. Living water, spring of life. Jesus, you're the well that won't run dry. In this life we will find that we will be searching. In this life we will find the world won't satisfy. In this life we will find that we will be hopeless without you, Jesus. Jesus, you're the well that won't run dry. Jesus, you're the drink that satisfies. Oh, living water, spring of life. Jesus, you're the well that won't run dry. We will thirst no more when we drink from you. Drink from you. We will search no more when we drink from you. Drink from you. We will thirst no more when we drink from you. We drink from you. We will search no more when we drink from you. We drink from you. Jesus, you're the well that won't run dry. Jesus, you're the drink that satisfies. life. Jesus, you're the well that won't run dry. You never run dry. Oh, you never run dry. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so As we discuss John 4 today, what joy to be able to sing and be reminded of that spring of living water that is welling up within inside us, that is Jesus Christ, and to be reminded of the greatness of our God.
Such a powerful song. Just that imagery of Jesus being the well that never runs dry. I don't know if you've ever lived on a farm or had to draw your own water. I never have. I grew up in small town Oklahoma, but I grew up in the town where we just had to turn on the faucet and we got all the water that we needed. Never had to dig a well. I never even had to go get water from a well. We've always just had access to water, and probably most of you are the same way. In fact, my kids today, if I ask them to go get some water to give to the dog, they can decide the kitchen sink, the bathroom sink. Do they really want to get, uppity and get filtered water out of the refrigerator for the dog? I mean, we have choices, right? We are the same way in our own lives. Access to water for most of us has never been greater. Now, some of you understand, too, that access to clean water is difficult, especially in some parts of the world where they just don't have easy access to clean water. I grew up in a town where we have one of the world's most polluted creeks coming through. That's not good water. You can get all the water you want from it, but it's not good water. It's harmful. In fact, when the river in town floods and it backs up into that creek, if that creek water gets out into anything, that's no good anymore. Because it's so polluted with contaminants like lead and zinc from all the mining that took place in that area. But what do we think about with water? Now, often anymore, it's just easy to go get these. I mean, you go to Costco and get a 40-pack of these for less than $4. I mean, that's pretty good, right? Like, that's pretty cheap, pretty accessible for many of us to get water. But this water, I took a drink a few moments ago when I was getting ready to start. I kind of need one now again. You know how it works, right? You need water constantly in your life. We need food constantly. We have to eat multiple times a day. You can eat and be hungry a little bit later. That's just how our bodies work. But in John chapter 4, Jesus comes across a woman and he tells her something very profound. Now, first, I'm going to set this story up, and I'm not going to get too deep into the context here because I want to save your time just a little bit. But Jesus is traveling through Samaria. That's a region of Israel that most of the Jews avoided. They didn't like the Samaritans. And in particular, this is a Jewish Samaritan woman. So this is somebody Jesus should have no part with as a respectable Jewish man. They had very clear societal dividing lines up, and this was one of them. But Jesus is in a region he shouldn't be, talking to a woman that he shouldn't be. And on top of this, she's a woman who's had multiple marriages and multiple affairs, and he addresses her first by telling her in verse 7 of chapter 4 to get him a drink. Now, they're sitting at a well, obviously. And the woman says, you shouldn't be asking me this. You're a Jew. I'm a woman. You don't talk to people like me because I'm below you. And Jesus is making something very clear here. No. I came for everybody. I didn't just come for a select few. I came for everybody. And I've got a pretty cool gift. Look at verse 10. If you knew the gift of God and who it is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Now think about this, living water. They're sitting at a well. They're sitting at a very famous well. And this is a well that Jacob used. Jacob from the Old Testament, he used this well to sustain his family and his livestock. But again, it's water, just like I have in my bottle here that I need to take drinks of throughout the course of the day. So Jesus goes on in verse 13. He says to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. And the water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. What's he saying? He's saying, I am eternal. You can fill up on anything in this world to satisfy you, to sustain you, and guess what? It's going to run out. That's just the way things of this world work. Many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Many of you are dealing with this right now. You're running on empty because you filled yourself up with something in the world. Maybe with what a certain politician is promising you in the world. Maybe it's what a certain person that you know in your life has promised you. Maybe it's what a job is supposed to fulfill you with, or something along those lines. You're filling yourself up with something of this world rather than the living water of Jesus. And yet here's Jesus coming to this woman who was not trying to find him. She wasn't seeking him out, and he sought her out anyway. Think about this. Jesus seeks out the person who's not even looking for him. And he offers her living water. And look at her immediate response when he tells her about the living water. Verse 15, she says to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not become thirsty or have to come here to draw water." Her immediate response is to ask for Jesus. Her immediate response is to ask for Jesus. And how many of us is that our immediate response? We know Jesus is the living water, and our first response is, I want this water, and I'll do whatever I need to do to get it. Now, Jesus kind of puts her through a bit of the ringer here, a little time of confessing of her sins and exposing who God really is to her. And she knows there's a Messiah coming, and Jesus tells her, hey, you know what? That's me. I'm your Messiah. But I think about this because too often I think we obsess over what we can fill our lives with that's temporary. What can we do to sustain us one day to the next? Maybe some of us, we have to have a job and we're living paycheck to paycheck. Or some of us, we're living meal to meal. Those are real things, and I don't want to minimize those. But for so many people, we try to fill our lives and sustain our lives with little things that we can create on our own or that we can control on our own. And Jesus, the living water, wants us to stop and sit down and drink him in. That's what I want to leave you with today. Wherever you're at today, if you're running on empty, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling a bit of anxiety trickle in, man, stop and look at what you're filling your life with. Are you filling it with something like this you see this is going to run out here in just a little bit. I'm going to drink the rest of this in a little bit. And guess what? Later today, I'm going to need another one. I'm going to be thirsty again. Are you filling your life with something like this? Or are you filling your life with the living water of Jesus? Have a great rest of your week.